What is Khirbet el-Maqatir? That sounds like a foreign language, which actually it is. It's Arabic, right?
Okay, the site is 10 miles north of Jerusalem. It's on the east side of Highway 60, the Patriarch's Highway. We argue that this is likely biblical I of Joshua 7 and 8. And in volume 2, I make the case that this is likely biblical Ephraim of John 11:54.
Let's talk about that earlier period first. Often you're calling it Second Temple. Tell us a little bit about that era maybe and what we know better about it because of the work we've done at Khirbet el-Maqatir, Scott.
Well, what's really neat is we can see a transition in the archaeological record there between this the pre-ritual purity wave and the post-ritual purity wave. So we have our Hellenistic strata. In the next stratum, just above that, these things appear. So the Eastern Terra Sigillata, where, for example, disappears, it's replaced by stone vessels in the archaeological record. And so this is a microcosm for enabling us to understand Judaism in that time period, which really prepared the time for the coming of the Messiah. By understanding this small site, we can then extrapolate out and understand what was happening in Judaism at that time. The goal of archaeology is not excavation, it's publication, because in the process of excavation, we destroy the evidence and we make it inaccessible to others. And so they would then be able to look at our data and accurately assess what was going on in history.
Tell us about the team and what it takes to get this done.
My goal was to establish a collaborative team of scholars, and that includes not only ABR members, but other scholars in Israel with whom we have built close relationships, or outside of Israel too. Guys like Shimon Gibson and Lane Rittmeyer, who are world-renowned scholars who had worked with us, Frankie Snyder and Boyd Sievers and Peretz Reuven and Yoav Farhi, that they would look at this along with our substantial scholarship and see that we were all in agreement.
So let's talk a little bit about the publication, the company that published it, Archaeopress. Let's talk about that a little bit.
And it was Shimon Gibson who recommended Archaeopress, and it just seemed like a really good fit. Talked with David Davidson and knew that we were going to be able to work together really well. And they've been great to work with, and I think they've been happy with us as well. So I was the author, but Mark Hassler and I were the editors of this volume. And so Dr. Mark Hassler from Virginia Beach Theological Seminary. Yeah, it's really exciting. It'll be open access, and people will just be able to go to the Archaeopress website or link from our website at ABR directly to that. And it's very affordable. In fact, it's so affordable that it's free as a download. So this is unheard of. Archaeological reports are normally hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and They're very technical and hard to get except in research libraries.
Tell us some of the highlights from the New Testament period.
We had domiciles, really nice complex courtyard houses. We had olive presses, wine presses, subterranean features everywhere. There's a whole chapter in volume 2 on the subterranean features, which so this became very clear that it was a Jewish village in the late Second Temple period. And as we looked at the identity of that village, it became clear that we were probably looking at Ephraim of John 11:54, where Jesus spent with the disciples the last month of his life prior to the triumphal entry. When we're dealing with the coins, like between 13 and 1400 coins and the stone vessels and everything else, we may be dealing with things that Jesus and the disciples actually interacted with. We have the human skeletal remains, the 8 murder victims that we excavated at Khirbet el-Maqatir, which became a huge international story as well. And then, of course, Jesus himself predicted the destruction of Jerusalem. Our site fell to that. It's terminated in 69, very likely when Vespasian marches through the north there, kind of in a mop-up campaign.
It turned out we were looking for Joshua's eye. Now, we knew there was remains there from later periods. Boy, what a treasure we found.
For many of the seasons, Dr. Wood was looking at unencumbered remains. That's what a khirbet is. It's sort of a ruin. It doesn't have the profile of a tell. What I wanted to do that was a little bit different was to go into these Second Temple period remains, but that underneath it, we would find well-preserved Bronze Age remains that we would be able to publish. And in fact, that's what happened. And so it was really kind of the daily double for us.
We also have remains from a later period, a little bit up on the hill. Talk about the Byzantine monastery and its significance.
One of the earliest in Israel. It dates to the 4th century. And in phase 1, it was a single apse structure Later, there were side apses that were added. But through various phases, we were able to document how the Christians were emerging, how they understood God and his work in history, and the fact that, for example, that church is built on the blueprint of Solomon's temple. We discovered that on a ratio of 2 to 1 from holy to most holy space.
It really is fascinating. And our theory has been the Byzantines commemorated biblical events. So is it Joshua's eye? Is it Abraham's tent, Genesis 12? Or was Jesus as Ephraim there, and it was commemorating Jesus? So those are interesting possibilities of why the monastery
and
was
if
put
you
there.
think about, for example, on the Madaba map, those are things that are being commemorated, including Ephraim is on the Madaba map. Ephraim, where the Lord stayed. So we know that Byzantines were doing that.
Hey, so let's back it up a little bit. Something you mentioned in passing, coins. People love coins.
Oh, yes.
Talk about the volume and the kind of coins that we discovered.
1,322 coins. Most of those bronze coins from the Hasmonean period, and like 700 of them were coins of Alexander Jannaeus. They're minted in the 1st century BC, but they continue in use all the way through the 1st century AD. Once I figured it out that they were continuing to use the Hasmonean coins, and in my view, this is a form of passive resistance against Rome. I mean, they prefer the older Hasmonean coins when you had Jewish independence.
All right, friends. Well, we hope that you'll pick up a hard copy of the Khirbet el-Maqatir Volume 2 or download the free one online. We'll make that information available for you. Thank you for supporting the ABR ministry and our digs. We hope to see you on a future dig, perhaps at Biblical Shiloh. Have a great day.